Okay, so we're going to start out with our usual warm up, just because the usual warm up gives you a chance to check in before your brain gets involved in more complicated things. So placing your hands anywhere in the mid body that you feel like you need a little more attention. If you've been sitting a lot, the energy from your hands can sort of help with the hip flexors being kind of tight. So I'm just sending a little warmth to my hip flexors, and where they exit to meet the top of my thigh, the iliopsoas lower attachment. You can put your hands on your hips, the outer greater trochanter. You can put your hands on your sacrum, your low back, whatever you feel called to. Circling then the movement, bringing your attention into your body, to your hips, in a kind of a soft, not too overly focused, but not still out wherever you were, just kind of a middle way observation. And then circling the other way. Noticing any holding, any changes through the movement. Sometimes the movement just feels good. You could just be with that. All right, so we're going to do the moving the middle, a little more difficult, keeping your hips still, and then taking the spine and circling it over the top. So here, if you're the quadratus muscles on the side of your low back are bothersome, or your SI joints are a little bit tweaky, you might notice that more in this movement, isolating the waist from the hips, the spine stirring on top of the still lower body. And here I'm just kind of keeping my hands on the container of my pelvis so that I know that it's the still part, and then circle the other way. So with this one, I feel a lot more awakening of the SI joints. All right, then we'll come back to stillness and go to the shoulders, starting first with thinking about the shoulder joints and how they move the bones of my upper arm, lower arm, wrist, and hands, but then bringing my attention to the scapula and how the scapula, reaching together and down the back, open up the rib cage and the sternum in the front. So I start the softening of the the thorax, which will help with my neck next. Circle the other way. Letting that relax and last. Pushing off your feet, just kind of imagining that you're able to lift one joint off of the other one as you go up through your crown. And lengthening one side of the neck. And then with a bit of ease, no big pressure when you drop your nose down. So the back of your neck is tight. You don't want to overdo it. Lengthen the side of the neck. And with gentleness, drop your nose down. And then turning out the opposite palm, which of course roots down the end of the scalene, which goes up into your neck. So you're going to get a different kind of stretch that way. All right. Then we're going to do a few, let's see, the nice way to do this Qigong is to go down the back and the backs of the legs. So I'm running the yang down to the earth and bringing the yin up. So the inside of the leg, the front of the leg, and then just kind of stirring up the belly where those energies kind of join. Coming up and guiding the energy from your face over the top of your head, down the tops of your shoulders, through the ribs. So this is gallbladder, and then goes into your glutes. And then if your fingers kind of touch down the back of your leg, that's the bladder meridian. Those are yang meridians outside of the leg and just to the back. And each time you go down, you can try to get down a little bit further, coming back up. Crossing of the dantian, and then guide the energy from the face, which is yang, over the top of the head, down, tops of the shoulders, gallbladder, through the ribs. And if your fingertips kind of touch towards your spine, that's the bladder meridian. Stomach on the outside, so your thumbs on your just the outer thigh, that's your stomach meridian, also yang. And then reaching towards the floor. If you can touch the floor, that's great. And then come back up, but you can always just intend the energy towards the floor. Come up the inside of the leg, that's spleen, liver, and kidney. Cross. Taking that yang energy of the face, bringing it over the top of the head, down the back, through the ribs and the back, down the outer thigh, and the middle of the back of the leg. Leads into the floor, and then drawing earth energy up the yin meridians. Okay, and we'll just stop here at the lower dantian. You can just close your eyes for a moment and let your face relax, feeling that qi flow around your body, the circuit of energy. All right, and then we're going to just do I'm going to show you, because if you have never seen Swimming Dragon before, it helps if I'm just facing you to kind of explain it. Then I'm going to turn around so you can follow me in the direction without having to think left or right. Okay, so you start with your feet together and your hands together in the prayer position. And I'm going to say this because I'm going left, which again will be easier to follow once I turn around. But my fingertips point left and make a complete circuit. When I come over the top of my head, my fingertips are pointed above. They go down the side of my head, and then they go underneath my chin again. So I just made one complete circuit of my head. When I start to drop down towards the dantian, the fingertips drop down towards the earth. I cross the front of the dantian. I bend my knees and go across the front of the knees. Let the low back stretch. So I make a complete circuit of the lower body with the fingertips down, cross the dantian. Then I start to go up again, the fingertips go up. Underneath the chin, make a complete circuit around the head, under the chin, fingertips down, cross the front of the dantian. So I did half a circle around the middle, full circle around my thighs, the other half of the circle around my middle, fingertips going up, under the chin, and around the head. So that's the circuit, right? It's kind of like an infinity, but there's two complete circles on the end and two half circles in the middle. And that's your pattern. And then remembering that when you go up, fingertips go up, and when you go down, fingertips go down. Okay, so I'm going to add one more element here. Well, there's going to be two more elements, but one is that when I come up, fingertips up, and I come up onto into the upper circle, I lift onto the balls of my feet. You can just let yourself feel that lift and up through the fingertips, and then sink the heels down as I come down the side of that circle, under the chin, across the dantian. Make a circle around your thighs, dantian, up, under the chin. Okay. So then here's the real fun part. So as whatever way my hand is going, my nose and my knees are going to go the opposite direction. So here's the writhing part. Here's the dragon part, right? My knees and my nose go one direction, my fingers go the opposite way. Come across, my knees and my nose go the opposite direction of my hands. Cross, knees and nose one direction, hands the other. So you imagine you kind of like skiing down a slope. You know, you're on skis. You're just like feeling the twists and the turns. Hands one direction, knees and nose the other direction. And once you have the pattern of the 3 circles, then you can focus more on the writhing energy. Okay, so if you're feeling confused, this might confuse you by turning around, but that way you don't need to, I'm gonna turn around right here. You don't need to think right or left. You can just follow me. Okay, so we go down one side. My knees and nose go the opposite direction of my hands. Knees and nose. Bottom circle. Knees and nose. Come up onto the balls of my feet. Sink down. Knees and nose one direction. Hands the other. Let the low back stretch. Up under the chin, up onto the balls of the feet, knees and nose. So my hands are coming down the right side, my knees and nose go the other way. Under, they switch, and switch, and switch. Fingers up onto the balls of the feet. So a lot of your endocrine glands are running along the core channel. So you're gently massaging your endocrine system. So in China, they use this as a weight loss, a Qigong for weight loss, but it has to do with the endocrine. Knees and nose, opposite direction. Stretch the low back. Under, lift up, sink down, and we're going to just stop right under the chin. Okay. So that's a good way to get a warm up and to celebrate the dragon. We're going to step out into a horse stance, and it doesn't have to be too big, but we're just going to do a little stretching here, sitting my tailbone down. So I'm just letting myself sit, and with my back a little bit more stretched out, I want to feel like I'm using a little bit of lower core to open my low back, and almost like I'm sitting on a spring that doesn't really want to, that has a lot of buoyancy to it. So almost like when I bend, there's resistance. So if you draw your navel in a little bit and open up your back, and it's like you just sat down on a spring that doesn't really want to collapse too much. You feel like there's a little resistance to you being able to really push that spring down. That protects your knees because you're working the tissue from your quad, and you're not collapsing and overbending your knees. So you just get that kind of sense that you're sitting on a stool that's a gigantic spring that you really can't crush. It's, you're working with that spring, and that spring is you. It's your back, and it's your quad, your hips, and you're really protecting your knees. So that's a good way to start a morning practice, is to change your back, use your core, change your back, and sit as though you're trying to get that spring to give a little bit, but it doesn't totally give. Okay, it's a little resistance to really sitting. And then you get a little bit more of a workout for your core and opening through your hips and a warm up through your hips, and you don't really impact your knee. Okay, so we're going to do a little slide side to side in our sit that is a little buoyant. So I have access to the medial lateral hip joint. And you notice it's like, okay, one side is often not like the other because we have a twist, a spiral in the body. So you kind of notice like which side feels tighter on the inside of the hip, etc. Just kind of feeling into that. One hip might have a lot more give than the other one. Right, so the best way to find where the center of my pelvic floor really drops into the earth is to, on purpose, set off the levelness. Come back and then drop my tailbone under and drop my tailbone back. The pubic bone's coming up and dropping down. I'm rocking as though this were a bit of a swing, porch swing, right? We're just forward and back with the pelvis and noticing where you have more resistance. So if you're anteriorly tilted, the posterior tilt is more work for you. And if you're posteriorly tilted, the anterior tilt or folding the hip is more work for you. Okay, and then the last direction that we work on is this crazy diagonal. And a lot of us have that diagonal in the pelvis already, like one side's picked up and we kind of move into the side that is dominant. So to correct that, we just go through the diagonal, noticing going out my SI joint, picking up and then opening the hip crease on the other side. So we start to train across the diagonal. And one side will be easier to do than the other. All right, and then I come back to the middle, and then I go out the SI joint and open the hip across the diagonal. One side will feel more coordinated than the other one as well, oftentimes. Okay, this is just a great one to get the focus on. If you've been sitting a lot and all the ligaments that hold your hip together, they just sort of get stuck. So if you do this multi-direction movement, focusing on the pelvic movement, you'll really get a lot looser in your hips. And now I'm just going to circle my hips. So that's all directions. It's quite different than when I'm standing, because I'm suspending the hips, so I'm feeling the hip joints more than when I'm standing. And then circle the other way. All right, now I stop and see how my pelvis just drops in this position with a little bit more ease. When there's tension being held in the pelvis, whatever our tension pattern is, we'll have the pelvis in that position, but multi-direction releases help you to drop. From that drop, and again, it's not compressing in the knees, it's this buoyancy in the legs, like you have a spring you can't quite compress. From there, it's easier for me to lift up through my core and lift up through my crown and then open my arms out to the sides. And just for a moment, just letting yourself reach from side to side. So I'm going to reach through the fingertips. I'm not changing my hips at all. I'm just reaching side to side. Okay, just letting the shoulder joints really, really stretch open, and then turn the palms up. And then take this for a moment. So the shoulder blades come a little bit together and down. The head of the humerus is facing more the sky. And I want to lift my crown and bring my chin in slightly. Okay, and then ever so slightly, just turn your palms forward again, but try not to lose the upward turn of the head of the humerus or the shoulder. Next, bend your elbows back slightly so you create the roundness before you release the shoulder. And then releasing the shoulder blades apart a little bit so the hands can come together. It's a good way to try to keep your chest open and your shoulder open while you create roundness in the front. Okay, so I'm going to just take my hands and drop them one more time. So this time I'm gonna rotate. I bring my shoulder blades and my hands are down. Bring my shoulder blades a little together and down, and then slowly roll my palms outward and let them float up so that my hands are about the height of my shoulder. My elbows can be slightly heavier. And just see what it feels like in your back to hold your arms up. You want to hold your arms up with the back muscles, the bigger muscles, and let the front be more open and stretched out. Without losing the openness of the front of your shoulder, let your wrists turn forward. Then bend your elbows back. It's good. This is like a Tai Chi yoga pose. Then release your shoulder blades a little bit so that your hands can come forward. But without, I'm bending my elbows just ever so slightly more so the hands can face each other. That way the front of the shoulder stays open. And now I'm open through my hips and I'm open through my shoulder joints and they're matching each other more. Okay, try lifting your elbows ever so slightly so you realize that if you're too high with your elbows, your shoulders get tight. And then drop down, find a middle way. And then if you drop the elbows downward, you start to feel the pecs tighten. So you don't want that. So you come back up, you float back up. So the balance of where your elbow sits, your hands are right in front of your lung points. It has to do with, if I go up with my elbows, I get tight on the top of the shoulder. And if I go down with my elbows, I start to get tight in the pec. I want to find a place where I can use my back to hold up my arms. Okay, we're going to do this one more time. This is as important, really, as getting my hips straightened out. Let my arms hang. I'm going to rotate. This time, I'm going to think about turning the head of my humerus out. So I'm going to roll my shoulder blades together and down, and then watch how that turns my whole arm and palms out. So I did this from my back. And then I let the hands float up, sinking the tips of my shoulder blades down my back as my hands come up. And you might feel a lot of stretching because your front of your shoulder isn't used to this. And try to feel that your back is holding up your arms rather than the front or the top of the shoulder. You're driving up from the underside of your shoulder blades in the back. And then without losing the openness of your shoulders, let your wrists turn a little bit so your palms are forward. And I'm having you bend the elbows back in order to engage a little bit more muscle behind your shoulder blade. And then releasing the shoulder blades out a bit so the hands can come in. And when your hands are about 45 degrees from the core of your body, you can let your elbow bend a little bit more so that you don't lose the open shoulder, right? So if I kept releasing my shoulder blades, my arms would stay straight and I would have that rectangle again. I want to go out with my shoulder blades to bring the hands forward and then slightly bend at the elbow to bring the fingertips forward so that the front of the shoulder stays open. Okay, and then elbow down, you start to feel pec. Elbow up, you start to feel the top of your shoulder. Somewhere in the middle, you could just feel your whole back supporting your arms. Okay, pressing the hands down. So we are working on shoulder opening. That's what we're doing for this little piece of yang rising and trying to get the shoulder. We've done a lot of work on the hips. Now we're trying to get the shoulders to match the hips. If the shoulders are always rolled in and down, the lower quad is going to want to collapse. So we have to go mirror the lower with the upper. So we'll do a few of the arm qigongs and then we'll go into form. So just to get a little bit more support for the back, I'm going to slowly come up with my hands. Palms are facing the ground. And set the shoulder. That means don't be too far forward with your fingers. Don't be too far back, but find the middle of very forward and very back so that your shoulder joint, you're sitting more in the middle of the shoulder joint, not set in the front of it, not set too far back. And then open up the palms and letting this first part is not too much energy. You can exhale here and then inhale to the top. Pushing down, pushing up. And mostly you want to feel your back. You're going to feel stretching in your shoulder, but you want to feel that your back is really helping you with the work here. And then you can majorly just release, exhale, and then inhale back to the holding position of both arms. Okay, so release, you can go along with an exhale. The effort to open heaven and earth, inhale. And of course, I'm stopping and I'm talking, so you don't hold your breath, just keep breathing. But if you want to add a little bit more breath to the action and align it with your energy, you can start the exhale. And you can inhale and exhale a couple times. But then when you come back to the middle holding, inhale and exhale. So about 45 degrees out, then inhale up, expand, use your back, and exhale. And inhale back to the holding of your arms forward. And exhale. And inhale up. Just places where you're adding a little bit more breath, inhale or exhale, but you can keep breathing. Don't hold your breath. You can inhale and exhale to adjust to where you are. Okay, we're going to go straight around the back, keeping that front hip and the front hand still and turning the heart to the side. And you're reaching around the back. You really want to feel the muscles right behind your shoulder blade working, because those guys, they fall asleep because we're not asking them to do much when we have all this hand forward action. Slowly come back. Turning to the side. You can inhale to expansion. And if you're holding, of course, you're going to keep breathing. And then start with an exhale, coming back. And then an inhale to come back to the holding forward. And exhale. And inhale. And breathe as you need. Inhale, exhale. You can always do little breaths. That's what we do in exercise. We use the breath and major excursions, and then we have smaller breaths in between to support our own need for oxygen. Exhale is the major breath, and inhale to expand. And if you're holding, you're going to inhale and exhale, small sips of breath, and then exhale. And then inhale. So that's a good one if you're really tight in the front of your shoulder. And last, we'll just do a few. Bend the elbows, drop the tailbone down into the earth, chin in, push from the feet up through the elbows, through the crown. And I like to hesitate and just do a little head press into my forearms to wake up the upper extensors leading into my crown or my skull. And then roll out and release. So you're going to hold and then inhale, exhale to bend, inhale to push from feet to crown, exhale to drop, inhale to expand, exhale to move forward, inhale to hold, exhale to bend, inhale, feet to crown, exhale to sit, inhale to expand, exhale to move forward, inhale to the hold, exhale to bend, inhale to lift, Exhale to drop. Inhale to open. Exhale to release. Inhale to the hold. And you can drop the elbows. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale and drop. Okay, so anywhere along that sequence, Alex is just starting to teach the breath with this. Anywhere along that sequence, it just doesn't feel right or natural to you, just do your breathing. And then you try again. So that's kind of the way that I'm doing, is like I might fall out of sequence with what he's saying because I need more breath there. But you can just add a little exhale and add a little inhale more at the times that you're directed to do that. Okay,